and welcome to another Press Start Australia preview, this time talking about Redfall, which, Brodie, you finally got the chance to go hands-on with the game. It was indeed hands-on, right? Like, you had the controller in your hand, you got to play the game.
I did, yes. I had the controller in my hot little hands.
I've got it wrong in the past, so it's good to clarify. Sometimes previews can mean something different. Gradually, we've learned more and more about this game, and our understanding of it has kind of grown over time. Having finally had the chance to go hands-on with it, though, how would you describe the game now?
It's obviously a big departure for Arkane. Like, it's not necessarily like any of their other games. Like, it still has a lot of really great world building, but I guess the open world itself is a lot more vast. Like, I feel like Dunwall and even, I guess, Talos 1 to a degree felt layered and vertical, whereas this sort of, at least the area I got to play in this one, it felt a lot more sprawling and vast and a lot more open space. Like, it's not windy streets and stuff like that. So, that said, yeah, like, I got big Far Cry vibes from it at times, Fallout vibes, in terms of how it sort of encourages that exploration. Like, they mentioned to me on the day, they said they made an effort not to put your objective, the proximity of it too close. They didn't want you to see that you were near it from ages away, just so that you would sort of explore and walk around and try and stumble upon things. So I guess that's a cool way to try and encourage people to just venture off the path in a way. But definitely an open world shooter, I guess, is how I'd describe it. But it doesn't have any of the... I guess I had in the back of my mind concerns that it might have, like, not live service elements, but like the things that you would equate with games like that and 4-player co-op, things like even like Outriders and stuff. But it felt more like a 4-player Far Cry.
Yeah, for some reason I was imagining it was a more of like, had a mission structure more like Left 4 Dead or Back 4 Blood more recently, I suppose. Same game, more or less. Please hear it. It's more open than that.
Yeah. Is that going to lead into James's next
I'm sure it is.
Yeah, well, I can ask that now.
James forgot we were trading questions.
So, yeah, no, it's fine. Did you? I guess with this game, did you get a feel for how the game progresses and how the missions are structured? Then, like, is it like 1-for-1 like Far Cry or?
Well, I say it felt like Far Cry, but I haven't played a Far Cry game for a while. But
they have,
I guess, in the sense that it doles out the single-player story missions, and then you've got the side things that crop up from time to time, and a lot of things to check off in the map. But yeah, I think the game did show its hand a little bit, how it is going to dole out its missions. Like, I think the premise of the game surrounds these 4 vampire gods that sort of hunker down in 4 corners of the map. And where I picked up in the game, it was about 30% in. Still on the first boss, which I believe his name was the Hollow Man. And the mission I played was called House of Echoes, and it sort of takes place in the middle of his arc, I think, and sort of explains who he is, who he was, before this, vampire experiment went wild and, the mad science turned the town into chaos. So, it feels very much like a, not Monster of the Week, but you focus on like one boss at a time, and I think you gradually open up more of Redfall as you go. So I would expect what I played was maybe a quarter of the map, and probably about a quarter into the game, probably. But yeah, you have a hub area, like the fire station in town is like used as a home base at like an early point in the game. You can find safe houses throughout the map that can act as like, obviously safe points to save and like be able to respawn from when you die in the world. But you can also pick up extra little side missions from there, which is cool.
That reminds me of Dying Light a bit, actually. The way that it's kind of like safe houses dotted about the place, and they often... Unlocking those often opens up new missions with like NPCs and stuff kicking around. Obviously what you played was single player, but this game's very much been talked about with a co-op capacity. Did you feel sufficient enjoyment from the game, I guess, like playing it solo, or did you feel like it was very much a cooperative experience that you were missing out on?
Oh, it's hard to say, isn't it, without actually getting to play it with people. But
I guess what I'm asking,
that was the
were you
biggest surprise
feeling
for me
lonely at the time you were playing it?
Yeah, there was a little love in the room. Yeah. What can I say? No, like it was the biggest surprise to me was that it was a single player session only, as like you said, they've marketed this game as 4 players. But that said, I think the game does work really well solo. Like, obviously you don't get the presumable synergies between, you know, characters and their powers and stuff like that, but the game has like more of a story than I actually thought it was going to have.
Cool.
Like, not that I expected Arkane to not deliver on story, but just because it was such a departure from their usual formula, I thought something would have to give. But like everything I sort of encountered seemed interesting enough and sort of propelled me along. The only thing I would say is that vast world I spoke of, like it felt a bit empty to like run across by yourself. Like if you were running across with like 3 mates shooting the shit and stuff, like that might be, it would be less noticeable.
There's no vehicles
so yeah, that was probably the only
either,
thing.
right?
No, like I walked past a number of like cars and I think even little quad bikes that were highlighted, and I thought, oh, I might actually be able to ride those, but I think they were highlighted because they're like enemies, like items you can blow up to damage people,
right,
and stuff like that. But so that is disappointing, like that there's nothing to get around the map quicker in, and the locomotion does feel kind of sluggish when you're on
There
your
could
own.
always be like not gliders, but like I don't know, some powers, because obviously everyone has powers and stuff. So maybe there's something there.
Yeah, like the player, I played as Layla, and she's got like a power that's a hard light elevator that sort of like propels you up onto the roof and stuff like that. Like it acts as like a bouncy castle, basically. So I mean that makes it cool to try and get to hard to reach places, I guess. But ultimately, because she's the only character that has that power, if you're playing solo as someone else, they need to let you get up onto that roof somehow. So it's not really essential to use it, if you know what I mean. But nevertheless, yeah, look, I'm sure once you get into it with more people, like it's going to be less of a slog to run across the map.
In terms of then, I would assume they didn't clarify how, say, co-op player progression works. Like in terms of who keeps progress or anything like that.
No, I was very curious about that, but no, as it wasn't really a topic of discussion, it wasn't on the cards for the day, we didn't really learn much about
which
that.
Which game was it we spoke about recently that we felt like did that
Wild
right?
Hearts did it really well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, just like everyone who joins keeps everything. And the game lets.
And if you're at the same point, then it progresses both your stories. But otherwise, it doesn't.
Yeah,
that does feel like the right approach.
Hopefully, that's a similar thing here, but to wait and see.
You mentioned the characters and the abilities, Brodie. You only played as the one character, but did you get much of a feel for the abilities that are available to you in the game? We often see in Arkane games that you can do some pretty neat things outside of the gunplay. Did you get glimpses of any of that at all?
Yeah, so each player, they get like 2 special attacks basically, and then you get an ultimate, which sort of is activated by both shoulder buttons. Like I said with Layla, she's got her sort of jumping castle hard light thing that is good for traversal, and then her other power up is basically a hard light umbrella that she projects in front of herself that deflects bullets.
Cool.
Now, the only enemies that were any relative threat in this hands-on that I had were the vampires who don't use guns. All of the cultists and the zealots and stuff like that, on the difficulty I was on, they didn't really warrant me to have to use my power-ups. They went down pretty easily, so I would think synergizing between these powers and having to really rely on them would come more on harder difficulties and maybe in more congested areas like nests and stuff like that you can find. That said, the combat is still rather tight. Like I like the gunplay a lot. It's got that real... it's not exactly pacey. It's not like a fast shooter like I'd say Call of Duty is or anything like that. There's a bit of a heft to it, which I think a lot of Arkane shooters do have. So yeah, I was... I would have liked to have been able to play around with the other characters, but I only had 90 minutes to try and like get through what I could see. So unfortunately I didn't. But like I say in my preview, in chats that we had after it, because we all sort of tended to play as different people, like the responses to all the characters were pretty positive.
Yeah. It's interesting that they didn't like group you together and play through it cooperatively. Like when I've done kind of similar previews in the past, they might just kind of pair you up with another couple of journos, and maybe a dev is in there as well to make sure you go along and you still get a feel for what the characters are capable of. But they want to save some surprises when the game does come out. I get that.
In terms of the weapons, though, is it just guns, or are they cool guns? Like, I don't know, like they shoot stakes or powers, or like not meat stakes. Like wooden stakes.
Oh, wooden stakes.
Not like meat. Well, there could be a meat gun. Who knows? Yeah.
Yeah, look, it's a bit of both. I think my character, when I took her on, I think I jumped in and I was already like level 7 or something like that. I had a pistol at my disposal and a shotgun, both of which were cool. Like I said, they felt hefty and did the damage, I guess. But you're also able to equip your weapons with a stake. So when you do enough damage to a vampire, it'll highlight and you'll be able to go up and, almost like a glory kill in Doom Eternal, I suppose, or Doom, you can finish them off to, yeah, obviously kill them.
Nice.
There are other cool weapons though, like later in the demo I got a UV gun, which basically harnesses the power of UV light to basically petrify these vampires and turn them to like solid rock, and then you can literally just punch them to bits. So that was definitely my preferred way to play by the end. It was very OP. But yeah, I mean, there's even, I didn't get to play with it, but there's actually like a literal stake launcher. Like you can shoot stakes at people across like the map and kill these vampires in like one hit basically. So yeah, I mean, there's, like I said, it's a bit of both. I hope as you get deeper into it, like it leans more into the absurd weaponry, because that was definitely the more fun stuff.
I'm still thinking about meat steaks, but maybe I'm just keen for my dinner.
I am.
Are the enemies you mentioned there like sound like quite a variety, and I think that's kind of one of the things that stood out to me upon seeing early glimpses of this game, because they just kind of seem to bring like an arcane level of flair to them and kind of a different sort of take on supernatural enemy types. Were they interesting to fight? Like, did you have to kind of respond differently to vampires as you would say cultists, or was it feeling more kind of shooter gallery?
No, I think there was definitely some strategy that crept in sort of more as you're dealing with the special vampires. So you've got obviously the general ads, which are like the cultists and I guess lower grade vampires. I was going to say aliens, vampires and stuff like that. But when you get more into the special ones, like you've got a lot of different, I guess you'd call them classes, and I guess they're meant to be the antithesis for like your group's powers, I suppose.
Right.
So like you get different ones that are like, you've got watchers that are like perched like gargoyles that act as like surveillance systems. They're really weak, but if they gauge you in the map, they'll send the alarm up basically, which is obviously one challenge. It stops you from going gung-ho through the map basically. You've got blood bags, which are basically like mines that explode, also weak but cause area of effect damage. You've got, there's another one I can't remember. It's more like a brutish hand-to-hand sort of one that just takes you down.
So familiar
You've
kind
also
of
got
character
like one
archetypes then.
Yeah, you got one called Shroud, which like puts a blanket of darkness like over the area you're in and sort of lowers your visibility, and it doesn't go away until you manage to kill them. Stuff like that. And one of the cool things is the game doesn't necessarily incentivize you to try and kill these special vampires, because if you do, like, you've got a meter that creeps up that says you're basically getting the attention of the gods, the vampire gods, who will then, if you fill the meter, they'll send something called the Rook after you, who's like this, like basically like a tank from Left 4 Dead, and he comes after you and just absolutely wrecks shop. So I didn't want to invite him on too much, because he was definitely very powerful, but it's basically just a way to keep the world a bit more dynamic and I guess keep you strategizing, because you obviously ultimately don't want to get fucked up by this. It sounds
like a wanted
vampire,
level system from like GTA.
Basically, yeah, it is like a wanted level from GTA, and he's the SWAT basically, so he's coming for you. So yeah, I would say one of the things I was impressed with was the variety of enemies in the game. Yeah, like I assume I've only seen a fraction of them as well. I assume it escalates from there.
Yeah, I hope like every area is different. Not like I wouldn't say to be dramatically different, but do you know what I mean? Like you kind of feel like you've seen it all after doing one. I hope it doesn't fall into that trap.
Yeah, like I get the sense that like each area will have its cultists, and they'll probably just be like reskins basically. But I'm hoping that as you get into different biomes, like maybe the vampires have developed in a different way, which I guess it just remains to be seen.
In terms of enemies, there's a lot of, in the footage I saw, which I don't think is you playing, I think it's someone else. But
yeah, someone very good at the game, not me.
You never know. Could create your own B-roll, Brodie roll. That's what I thought it was. Yeah. Anyway, I noticed there's a lot of sneaking, and a lot of stealth. So I am assuming this isn't like an all-out shooter, right? Like, but I'm wondering, do you reckon it's better to go for stealth? Like, are these enemies really like overwhelming or powerful, or like what's the go there? Like, what do you think? Is there a balance?
I can comfortably say I didn't bother sneaking at any point. It's not my style. But that said, there was definitely a few areas where I did go loud and I got overwhelmed very quickly. Like, I feel like the game at times doesn't mess around, and it can sort of swamp you with numbers pretty quickly, and it's pretty insurmountable, because one thing I noticed is there's no real good dodge mechanic in this game, so like you literally just have to keep trying to jump back from these vampires that do lunge at you, so it can be a bit hairy, especially in some of the areas like literally where there's a lot of them in the street, or if you're in a vampire nest, which are like these obviously special areas where you can go into to get better loot and stuff like that and clear them out and destroy the heart of the nest and all that sort of stuff. Some of the, like, the ones I did in my demo were particularly hairy, so look, if you are that way inclined, I think it probably wouldn't hurt to be a bit sneaky. That said, I don't know if there's any real options for stealth attacks or anything like that. I didn't remember even anything in the tutorial, but it's not to say there's not. I didn't notice.
It reminds me a lot of Dishonored then, I think, in that, you can be super stealthy, but you've kind of got the tools to change your approach if you get found. Like one of the, do you know what I mean? Like you can kind of shift between them.
Like, I'd be surprised if they don't, like, they've got such a good pedigree as far as stealth goes. It'd be surprising if they did away with it entirely for this game, so it'd be there in some capacity, I'm sure.
As you're kind of engaging with the combat, exploring the world, like what is there to find? You collecting loot and gear? Like, is there any comparison to be made to, say, a Borderlands or anything like that? A looter shooter, I suppose?
Yeah, probably not that aggressive in terms of loot. It's definitely there. Like, you're able to, like, pick up newer weapons all the time that have different attachments and stuff like that. So, it was definitely evident. But, like I said, it's not like Borderlands where you're picking up radically different things.
Okay.
And, it's not a game with a trillion different gun configurations
or like 10
and stuff
different
like that.
pistols with, like, a different number for each one.
Yeah, I certainly didn't get that vibe. Like, it's, there's probably 7 to 10 weapons or something like that, and, you're able to vary them ever so slightly, but I think it's pretty much what you see is what you get.
Cool.
Like, I think, like you do, you have a level, and I think guns that you pick up can have levels as well, but that's probably the limit of it. It's not like you've got, like, skill trees on guns and stuff like that.
It sounds like there's more of a progression to it, like, hitting a certain level and gaining access to a new weapon type or something.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
In terms of, like, say, the story, not even the story per se, but like with Prey, for example, you could walk into a room in that game, and even though there might not be a cutscene or dialogue or whatever, you can kind of tell what's happened. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's, like, a really good sense of, like, world building. I feel like in a lot of Arkane games. Do you feel this game has that? I know that's a big question. A lot of people were kind of wondering, because it is quite different to what they normally do.
Yeah, I think maybe because it's certainly a lot bigger, Redfall, I would say. I guess it wasn't as densely lore heavy. Like, I didn't notice. Like, there's obviously moments of it. Like, you go to, like, in the mission I did, like, you go into Dr. Addison's manor and all that sort of stuff, and you get a lot of world building in there that sort of fleshes out his story. Some of it, like, directly through, like, not cutscenes, but, like, you see holograms play out in front of you and stuff like that fill in story, but you can infer a lot of things from just the way his house is decorated, even. Like, some of it does, I guess it does tell its own story, but I definitely got a sense that there's a lot more, I guess, like, filler architecture, like, in this world, where it's not there to, service the storytelling or the world building or anything like that. So
Yeah.
I'd say the world building is there, it's just not quite as densely integrated as their last games, I would say.
And on the topic, I guess, of how much this game is different to other Arkane games, like, they're known for their immersive sim, kind of, I guess, championing that genre. Is there any sort of carryover from that legacy in this? Were there any elements to it that felt like hallmarks of the immersive sim genre?
kind of like in Prey, you know, like how, with the glue gun, you could really do all this shit that the developers didn't necessarily like want you to do, but because of the way the systems and stuff work, you could use the glue gun to like climb or to like block off a window to stop things from following you. You know,
kind of invites that player agency, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah. Probably not to the depth that they did in games like that, because I guess this doesn't have the somewhat linearity that those games have. Like it's a lot more open. But look, to say they've done away with it entirely, like I don't want to say that, but it's certainly not. I wouldn't pick this up and think, oh, this is the guys that did Dishonored. Like the art style would let you believe that, and things like that. But like, it's hard to know because I only got to run through this mission once to know whether there's multiple ways that you can do it. But it's certainly the way it was fed through to me. It seems certainly pretty linear in how it sort of plays out. So I'd be surprised if it's like, granted, like when you get to like the last mission of each arc, like it might be you got to kill this guy, and that might be like your sole objective from the start of the mission, and it's just up to you to work out how to do it, like Dishonored or Hitman or something like that. But I certainly didn't get the sense that a lot of Dishonored's DNA carries over. Like, I wouldn't say
it's interesting, Redfall, isn't it? Because like I feel like it's trying to speak to a new audience, maybe like people that haven't played arcade games in the past. But I'd hate for them to kind of lose the reputation that they have with
arcade games are like critically renowned, clearly, but they've never been like massive sellers. So they're clearly going for like a more mainstream audience with this, and it's a bold move for them, obviously. But like based on what I've played, if like all the things do click into place, like it might sound like I've been rather down on this like throughout talking about it, but I'm not. Like I actually had a lot of fun with it. I think like I said, the gunplay's tight, the vampires are fun to face off against, and the story was definitely driving me along. So I think it's going to be a good game that you can play by yourself, but I'm very, very more eager to see how it's going to be with 3 other people, because I think that's when the game's going to like fire on all cylinders, basically.
In terms of like story still, I noticed in the footage a lot of it was narrated, almost as if, kind of reminds me a little bit of Alan Wake in a way. Do the characters like speak to each other, or is it literally just narration over quiet characters?
Yeah, I'm trying to think about it now, actually. I'm trying to remember if my character even engaged with anyone directly during my playthrough. Like, obviously, I got handed the mission at the fire station and all that sort of stuff, but I think that was more the person, almost like Destiny, if you like, sort of, when you go see Zavala at the tower or whatever, and he just talks at you and like gives you the objective and all that sort of stuff, and then you just shoot off. Like, I can't actually remember my character having any like,
because like the first thing I saw from
quips or
from this
like
game back in was like the cast characters is quite like, you know, dynamic. Like there's they all look like they would have different personalities and stuff. But then I was like kind of surprised to not hear them speak like at all, and I was wondering if that was
they at least playing solo, and maybe it is just because I was playing solo, like maybe if you're all playing together there's a lot more intertalk and stuff like that. But the characters did seem rather like surface level in terms of like at least the protagonists.
When you play solo as well, is it just you? Like there's no AI or bots or anything?
No AI. Yeah, it's just you.
I wonder if that is the reason then. Like if there's kind of a back and forth between multiple characters as you're playing together. Because you're right, James, like when they showed the game, it seemed like the core characters had a ton of personality to them. And I was imagining kind of, again, going back to Left 4 Dead, kind of that banter back and forth between the characters as you're just sort of going through the motions. Interesting. I can't wait to hear more about this game. I'm coming out of this conversation a lot more optimistic for the game, I think, than I was going into it. And pleased to hear you enjoyed it and are looking for a squad to assemble. This is obviously a Game Pass game, right? Like we're all going to be able to play this together.
Yep.
Excellent.
Absolutely. If you don't play it with your other friends first.
Yes, I've been guilty of that in the past. Hopefully not this time around. Well, Brodie, thank you very much for your time, sharing your thoughts on the hands-on preview of Redfall. Do check the site for Brodie's full written piece. But yeah, Brodie, thank you.
Pleasure.